His name is Eric Sankey, and he is level 0. He is unable to deal with the demon beast and survives by collecting trash. People like Eric with a 0 level are considered a burden in society. They are read as absolutely useless garbage. Many might say that Eric Sankey lives like real trash, but Eric always knew he would never die like trash. Eric was confident that he could defeat the monster and inflict fatal damage on it. City G contained a Class C Abyss gate. It was here that the senior garbage man of the Abyss, Eric Sankey, worked. His job is to collect and sort the trash left over from fighting monsters every day. The management doesn't want this resource to leak to ordinary people. These are C-class crystals. One such crystal costs 50,000 won. The boss warned Eric that if he stole even one crystal, not only would he not get paid, but he would also go to jail. And the garbage man replied that he didn't need to worry because he had been working here for many years and knew all the rules. The work of the Abyssal Scavenger is performed by those who are at level 0, and if the combat team has not dealt with all the monsters, then the lives of the scavengers are at risk. It would not be an exaggeration to say that this is a very dangerous job. For returning from the dungeon, you can earn 300 wen. Each garbage man gets 1,000th of the garbage collected, which is about 600 wen. 30% is given to the management, and in the end, 540 wen is left on hand. Eric Sanka had a debt of 670,000 wen, and he needed to work harder. A friend told Eric that there was a job for him for 3,000. He advised him to take part in it because he knew that Sankey needed money. Eric agreed. The group took the bus to the shopping center of Shenfeng City, where the Class A Abyss was located. Now Eric understood why such a big reward was announced, because people had already been sent there, but none of them returned. He also learned from a friend that one of their goals was to take the equipment of these poor guys who never returned. A friend was outraged by the piggish attitude of the authorities towards people and the fact that they monetized even the Abyss. 10 years ago, the gates of the Abyss rose from the underworld. Then the man came face to face with the terrible creatures, and only a special class of people could defeat the creatures there. When the first monster was defeated, people discovered not only magic crystals but also mysterious weapons. So, having studied all the continents, man began to study the Abyss. The economy changed its direction, traditional enterprises closed, and all funds went to support a new market niche, the Abyss industry. But Eric Sankey could not get a job anywhere with his 0 level. He could not pay for his sister's treatment in the hospital because he did not have enough money. Eric was 2 months behind on his rent, and his landlord threatened to throw him out on the street. The situation was extremely grim for those who had a 0 level. Eric decided to take out a mini loan that he could get in just 1 second. All that was needed was to leave one's organs as collateral. Eric took out a loan of 1 million and lost it all on the stock market. Now, if he doesn't pay off the debt, he will lose 1 kidney. In addition, he pays for his little sister's treatment, and the medical bills are huge. Many of his acquaintances believed that Eric Sankey would die before he could collect the required amount, and that he would have to work as a garbage man until his death. Meanwhile, the bus arrived at its destination, and the combat team members who met the team noticed that they were not in a hurry. Finally, everyone went to the entrance to the Abyss, and Eric decided that this time he would try to earn money and return alive. He looked hopefully towards the Abyss. Eric Sankey entered the B-class Abyss for the first time. The team had only taken a few steps when the monsters rushed at them. It was a large pack of spirit wolves. Lance Chance used fire magic, and his balls caused considerable damage to the monsters. The surviving wolf spirits hastily retreated. The leader urged everyone to remain vigilant and warned that demons could attack from anywhere. Their destination was the 5th floor, and it seemed like the first floor had become 5 times wider and 3 times taller. The guy in glasses said that this is how the Abyss works. From the outside, it looks normal to the outside world, but inside its structure changes. But why are there no traces of the previous group anywhere? Where are the corpses? The bodies had to be found because the garbage collectors weren't there for a walk. Lance squatted down to tie his shoe and casually remarked that no matter where the 0 went, he would always end up in the way. As if to confirm his words, Eric Sankey stumbled and fell to the ground. Lance yelled at him rudely and told him to watch his step. He was always annoyed by these garbage men. The group leader told Lance not to get distracted because they had big things ahead of them. Chance roughly pushed Eric away and warned him not to come near him again. Lance exclaimed in irritation that they had assembled a dream team. Outcasts of society, burden, trash. This is what they call everyone who is on the 0 level. What no one knew was that Eric Sankey was just 1 point short of moving on to the next level. Eric saw the wolf spirit attack a member of the battle group. The garbage man was surprised that this guy from the combat group was scared in front of a monster of a low rank. This beast had a critical level of health. Eric Sankey saw a wooden shield and a level 1 stick lying on the ground. The young man decided to cast aside all doubts. Armed with items that someone had thrown away, he wanted to take his chance. Eric boldly rushed to attack the monster. However, the desperate blow to the beast did not cause any damage to it. The squad members looked at Eric Sankey in bewilderment. Did he really not know that only a combat group could deal with monsters? Of course, Eric was aware of this, but his skills were too low. With such weak equipment, he couldn't penetrate the defense of even the weakest monsters. His only advantage was that he understood perfectly well the situation he was in. Lance laughed when he saw Eric Sankey avoiding the wolf's attacks and said that as soon as the Zeros saw the monster, they would run with their heels flashing. The leader added that by killing a monster, you can earn a couple of luck points, but only if this monster is not a demon beast. If so, then write it off. It's gone. He stated that they would take the most expensive items for themselves, and the rest should be given to the garbage collectors. They should clean everything up here. The group's mage drew the boss's attention to the fact that it seemed that one monster had survived. Everyone saw that it was a demon beast and started running. Lance stated that the purple gear was his and no one should take it. Meanwhile, the wounded animal furiously attacked Eric Sankey. Eric fought back desperately. He didn't want to die like trash. He managed to hit the wolf right in the chest with a piece of a wooden stick. The damage inflicted by Eric Sankey proved fatal to the wolf spirit. The garbage man wearily sank to his knees before the corpse of his opponent. Jubilation swept over his entire body because he had defeated the monster. Lance Chance walked up to the young man with a smile and said that it seemed like a lone horse had managed to defeat a low-level wolf. Does Eric really think he's a hero? He's actually a suicide, and they're not here to drag his corpse around. The battle group has many career paths. Once a person reaches the first level, he can join the battle group and even get a special specialty. But to achieve this, you need to think about how to gain experience points. Zeros cannot defeat the demon beast. It is the same as going to certain death. Risking my life for so many years to find someone wounded that I could just finish off, waiting day after day. By killing a demon beast, a person receives 1 experience point. This is the only way to gain experience points. Just at this time, Eric received a system message that he was moving to the next level, and Lance, seeing this, was incredibly surprised. Eric Sankey has finally reached level 1. However, nothing else happened. He remained a garbage man with a maximum level of 1 unit. Lance laughed heartily, because even after reaching level 1, Eric was still a garbage man, since level 1 was the maximum for them. He mockingly told the young man that such a chance comes once in a lifetime, and he remained a garbage man, but the job suited him. Then Lance told Sankey that his friends had already left and he would have to clear the dungeon alone. Eric thought sadly that if level 1 was the maximum for a scavenger, then he couldn't use equipment to go up. But what's the trick with garbage collectors? Eric walked up to the dead wolf spirit and stopped, looking at it. It was recyclable waste, and the system asked if it needed to be recycled. Having confirmed the request, Eric Sankey felt an incredible surge of strength and energy. The body of the wolf spirit was instantly pulled away by some huge hands, and Eric decided that this was the garbage collector's gadget. The system reported that waste processing is in progress. After some time, the processing was completed, which the system notified Eric about. He received the Ghost Rush card and 3 equipment points. Eric guessed that corpses can be used to get cards and equipment points. Eric Sankey opened the system summary and looked at his stats. To use the received card, it was necessary to have 3 dexterity points. Then he decided to convert equipment points into agility points, since there weren't enough of them. Now all the conditions for containing the Phantom Dash were met. Eric had 4 dexterity points, and he could use the card. He felt some surge of energy, but it seemed to him that it was not enough. Eric did not feel any visible changes in his body. At this time, the leader of the group called him, and Eric ran with incredible speed, surprising even himself. Then he tripped over some trash and fell to the ground. He didn't have this skill before. The speed he developed was incredible for a normal person. The Ghost Dash skill was recharging, and Eric was happy with the skill he had received. The system also reported that several units of recyclable garbage were found. Eric realized that he could get not only equipment, but also abilities. This is the trick of a scavenger without a maximum level. Sankey smiled contentedly and thought that the abyssal scavengers were incredibly cool. Eric Sankey acquired useful skills and experience on the very first day of visiting the abyss. He cleaned up the dungeon and recycled the killed monsters. When he processed the corpse of the wolf spirit for the first time, he received the ability of the Ghost Dash. Since then, no matter how many corpses he processed, he did not get any new ability, and each time the points were given less and less. Eric decided that maybe in order to get a different ability, he needed to rework another monster. So far, he had scored 111 points and was thinking about which skill he should level up, because he didn't know when he would be able to score more points. After some thought, Eric decided to simply divide all the points equally, and after this manipulation, his strength, agility, intelligence, will, physique, and luck became the same, and equaled 20 points. Meanwhile, the members of the battle group dealt with almost all the monsters and successfully fought with the remaining two. The leader told Lance that the guy had changed jobs to being a garbage man, and he never even knew that was possible. The guy with glasses explained to Keith that 3 hidden jobs were added every year, but the rankings of the most valuable jobs never changed, and most of the so-called hidden jobs were just for fun. Lance sighed and replied that given his max level was 1, he was only slightly stronger than the zeros, and it didn't really change anything. The leader ordered to stop talking and move on, carefully observing the surroundings. The fighters approached a place that greatly surprised and puzzled them. Keith said, looking at the remains of the captain of the Falcon hunting group, that the mission's target had been discovered, and the mage asked in confusion how something so big could fit inside the shopping center. And on the 5th floor at that? The man in glasses muttered that it had been less than 48 hours since the abyss had transformed, and the corpses of those who had died here looked like they were 10 years old. Apparently, it was some kind of magic. The mage added that they had only encountered weak demon beasts along the way, and Falcon was a B-class, so how could they not cope with such weak creatures? Keith became alert and exclaimed that there were more than just demon beasts here. The city's television broadcast breaking news that an abyssal transformation had occurred in the Shenfeng City shopping mall, reaching danger level B, and currently 27 people were declared missing. Keith shouted loudly and ordered the entire group to get ready. The leader was the first to realize that it was an ambush and they were now surrounded. Lance Chance immediately sent magical fireballs towards the reanimated corpses. Keith guessed that the low-level demon beasts were just there to bring them here. But the most terrifying thing was that the final boss of this abyss that appeared before them was a Class A abyss carnivorous plant. The entire Falcon hunting party has now turned into zombies and rushed to attack Keith's squad. Eric Sankey, meanwhile, continued to recycle trash, collecting it from all over the dungeon. He even received an award for processing 50 corpses. It was a heart-shaped necklace and a regular dagger. Even the rewards for the garbage man were just junk, which was very ironic. Suddenly, Eric heard a terrible roar and turned around. He saw some strange creature approaching him. Eric managed to use the agility skill Excellent Evasion and avoided the monster's attack. This creature even scared him. The young man thought that the end had come for him. So unexpected was the attack. However, Eric Sankey noticed that he became much more agile because he had improved his agility. But the monster repeated its attack. Eric parried it with a kick. He felt that he was not only more agile, but also significantly stronger. So Eric activated Phantom Dash and tried to deliver the finishing blow to the monster. The strength skill was also used and the young man managed to break the enemy's defense. The damage he inflicted was 100%. Eric was pleased with himself. The current version of himself was incomparable. Now his intelligence skill allowed him to find his opponent's weaknesses. In front of him was a high-level zombie, and its weakness was fire, and its weak point was its neck. The zombie lunged at Eric again. Remembering that the monster's weak point was its neck, Eric Sankey decided to use a dagger, and in addition, the young man used the skill of luck. The monster received serious wounds and fell to the ground, bleeding. Eric stood over the corpse and the body skill he used began to destroy the plant poison that had soaked the monster's blood. Eric Sankey killed someone personally for the first time, and the system reported that recyclable waste had been found. A zombie body. The scavenger sent it for recycling, and upon completion a new skill was obtained, poison resistance, the effects of which from poisoning could now be converted into useful effects. Now Eric could buy poison like water with the card he had received. He used the card and acquired a vial of spoiled poison. Eric knew that with poison resistance, all poisons would now be converted into beneficial effects. He opened the cap of the bottle and took a few sips of the poison to see what would come of it. Thanks to the resistance to poisons, the poisonous effect was transformed into a healing effect, and all of Eric's wounds were healed. The system reported that the duration of this effect was 10 minutes. The young man felt a powerful surge of strength. Eric remembered that the better the intelligence was pumped up, the more weaknesses he would be able to see in the enemy. So this time, he decided to invest in pumping up his intelligence. At that moment, he heard some movement and noise behind him. They were monsters, and there were a lot of them. Garbage Man. Eric Sankey was always treated as trash, a burden, and a completely useless person. But now he wanted to show everyone that he was a garbage man, and they were all garbage that needed to be recycled. The team continued to fight with all their might against the risen dead. These zombies were unusually strong, not to mention the carnivorous plant. Keith ordered his men to retreat. The zombies were hot on the fighters' heels. The team leader realized that they would not be able to defeat these monsters on their own. Lance Chance ran ahead of everyone, and Keith fought off the advancing zombies from time to time. Lance only came here for money and gear, and he thought it would be stupid to just die here. Keith tried to stop Chance and said what the hell he was doing. They were on the same team. Lance apologized and told the leader that he would have to hold off these monsters. He cynically promised Keith to pay for his funeral. Lance continued to run, despite the cries for help from his comrades. He decided that he wouldn't lose anything if he ran away. He had already collected a couple of items and he just needed to come up with an excuse for why their team died. Suddenly, a human figure appeared in his path, and Lance sat down on the ground in surprise. It was the garbage man Eric Sankey, who asked Chance reproachfully if he had really betrayed his captain by shamefully fleeing the battlefield. Lance looked at the mountain of dead zombies behind the boy and asked in surprise, "Did he really do this himself?" Chance had already decided not to leave this guy alive because he would definitely tell everything. Lance rushed at Eric and said that if he wanted to become stronger, now was the time to feed him to these creatures. Eric easily blocked the use of physical force and redirected it towards the attacker. Lance fell on his back with a scream. Eric Sankey considered him a scumbag because being a traitor is even worse than being trash. He threw it into the recycling bin. Lance screamed wildly until the processing was complete. The system reported that such garbage cannot be recycled, and Eric told Lance that sometimes garbage just needs to be gotten rid of, after which Chance was thrown out by the system. The trash recycling skill was improved, and trash abilities could now be recycled with the trash's consent. Eric received a 3-minute Spellmaster experience card. He thought that silence was a sign of consent, and that it was very convenient. Eric Sankey used the card and felt a new surge of strength. He received the skill Lord of Flame. Now to use the skill Fireball, 15 intelligence points were needed. Eric had 50, and when using the effect of the Cloud and Fireball, it was possible to evolve them into a Big Bang. At that moment, Eric saw a huge crowd of zombies approaching him. The scavenger activated the Fireball, concentrating all the energy in his palms. He then sent a large explosion into the center of the monster cluster. After a deafening explosion and fire, only ashes remained from the zombies. Suddenly, Eric Sankey was attacked by a lone zombie armed with 2 swords. The garbage man had to retreat. He barely managed to dodge the monster's stabbing blow. Eric used his dagger to counterattack. However, the young man realized that his close combat skills were lacking. This risen dead man was none other than Keith. Eric decided to use the golden shield. With this equipment, he launched a decisive attack on the zombie and decapitated it. He could now recycle it too, and this time, Keith would rest in peace. Eric was given a dagger mastery card, allowing him to wield the weapon like an assassin and be immune to piercing attacks. Eric Sankey used the dagger mastery card and thought that being a scavenger wasn't so bad. Lance Chance was part of a mission to find the Falcon hunting party and bring them back to base. If the mission participants do not deliver their bodies, the mission will be considered a failure and they will not receive a reward. Lance replied that he knew the rules of the game. He was asked if they had found the Falcons or not, and Chance replied that he had found them, but they had already been recycled. That man dragged them into the Abyss. In the Abyss Oversight Committee interrogation room, Lance was told that he was the only survivor of the team and that the person he was talking about didn't exist. And the strange thing is that when they found Lance, his level had dropped to 1, something that had never happened before. Chance continued to claim that the man had recycled his abilities. He was the scavenger on their team. The agents believed that the man had a high level of void energy contamination because he was sucked in and spat out so hard, which could have caused hallucinations, and it was suspicious that the player who held the position of the main assassin on the team survived. After everything that happened, Eric Sankey sold all the magic crystals on the black market, but received only about 30% of their value. The business built on these crystals has always been a monopoly, so private transactions are considered illegal, so the black market set the rate at 70%. The magic crystals were barely enough to pay off those sharks from the past, and the recycling abilities he used in front of others could provoke them to report him to the supervisory committee. Not to mention that he had awakened to a hidden profession. and then they would have locked him up and started studying him. He needed to make money while he was still free. The captain of the new team said that this abyss has just appeared. It is still not fully known what the risks will be in it, and therefore they will receive a double reward. Those who can change professions should approach him and sign up. Eric approached the leader and said that he would suit them, and he asked about the young man's level. Eric Sankey replied that he was a first-level garbage man. The leader asked him where such a loser got so much courage from. He should be among his own kind. Eric decided that if this man thought he was weak, it would confuse them, and he would sneak in somewhere at the end and be on their side, in which case no one would notice if he started recycling corpses. That was Sanka's brilliant plan. The commander held Eric's hand tightly, but then someone's voice told him to let the boy go. It was Julian Lee, a rising star of the hunting party, just awakening to her God-chosen profession, who told the captain to take this guy into the team because they were short of men. The commander replied that this loser was at the first level and couldn't do anything, but the girl still ordered to take him for the sake of numbers. The captain said that they were all here only to protect Mrs. Lee and that she always had the last word. And Eric thought with relief that he had been accepted for the role of a complete non-entity after all. He looked closely at Julian Lee and thought that he had seen her somewhere before. Here he remembered the events that happened to him 2 years ago. He then fought the magical bear, receiving 1 point for the fatal blow. Then Julian, who was in the same place, asked him if he was really a scavenger. How did he manage to kill such a strong monster? Eric admitted that it was her first time doing it, and he earned 1 experience point for it. Lee admitted that she had heard that this was how you could level up, but she had never met anyone who had used this method. Could he really get experience points this way, but why was he doing it? Eric honestly said that he does it for the money. The young man collected the crystals that had fallen from the monster, and Julian said that she didn't believe him, because it was too risky, to which Eric replied that she was lucky with her profession, but she couldn't even imagine how others had to survive. Eric said in bewilderment that she had no team and didn't care about life at all. When she met demon beasts, she just rushed at them. What was she trying to achieve? Julian Lee proudly replied that she wanted to become stronger and wanted to be the first to conquer that place. The garbage man asked what place she was talking about, and the girl asked Eric why he really wanted to change his profession. He replied that he wanted to protect his family. After this, Julian wanted to know the name of this young man, and he answered that his name was Eric Sankey. Then the girl extended her hand and said her name, expressing confidence that he would be able to change his profession one day, and when that happened, she would invite him to her team, and then they would conquer that place together. Eric shook Julian's hand and asked her not to stop him when the time came, and the girl asked him to change his profession first because she had 30 monsters on her account at the moment, and he had only 1. At this time, her servants, who had been looking for her in the dungeon for a very long time, rushed to Milady. They ordered the garbage man not to approach the lady. After that, they quickly led Julian to the exit, informing her that their boss was furious, and he almost broke their necks. Finally, Julian Lee threw a crystal to Eric. The garbage man caught him easily. Julian shouted to the young man that this was his first award. Eric Sankey waved his hand in gratitude and put the crystal in his backpack. This girl's name was Julian Lee. The captain confirmed to Eric that it was definitely Julian Lee in front of him, and that he should not stand rooted to the spot, but should move these crystals. The garbage man approached the girl and said that he would try very hard not to drag the others down. Julian nodded and told him to grab his gear and head out. The team headed to the entrance to the abyss. This time, Eric Sankey decided to try to earn some money and return alive. When he emerged from the previous abyss, he mastered the Golden Shield and the Dagger Master, and also incredible Berserker abilities. Also, the boss's abilities are abyssal. It was a super generation of a carnivorous plant. Now he could choose any profession, and there should be no disadvantages. He distributed the additional points evenly between 6 characteristics. In total, more than 100 points could be scored on each characteristic. After all, he was the one who had completely recycled everything recyclable in the previous abyss. But what level would be equivalent to 100 points? Eric used the all-seeing eye on the warrior who stood in front of him and saw that his violence was only 12 points, and his weak point was intelligence. There was only 1 point. If the strength of a mere mortal is estimated at about 1 point, then this warrior is 12 times stronger than an ordinary person, and he has 100 points of strength, so he is 100 times stronger than an ordinary person. Suddenly, the walls of the dungeon began to move chaotically and everyone thought it was an earthquake. Eric Sankey inserted a fallen brick into the wall and said that this underground structure was somehow unstable. At this time, in one of the niches, the group leader found an A-class chest and expressed regret that there were no Dagger Masters in their squad to open it. Eric volunteered to help with this. It was as easy as pie for him to pick the lock on the chest. The captain said that only a dagger master above level 4 could pick locks, and Eric countered that a level 1 scavenger could do it too, because they often found locked chests when they were scavenging. The leader said that they would split the contents of the chest after the mission, but for now they should continue moving deeper into the dungeon. Eric Sankey asked the fighters to stay put because he thought there was something ahead. When the door to the next corridor opened, everyone saw a huge projectile that jumped out of the trap, and if people had entered the corridor, they would have been injured by it. The girl mage asked Eric if he was really at level 1, and the young man replied that he was just lucky to stumble upon something he was good at. Traps often come across when he was collecting trash, and he had suffered a lot from them in his time, so now he can easily figure out where they might be. Julian Lee looked at this strange guy very carefully. A successful check on the trap made the target more impressive, and it was all thanks to Eric's 100-point intelligence. The leader handed him a broken mace, which was still usable at level 1, and said that it was his personal reward, from which Eric concluded that in their eyes, he was still a useless person. The squad continued moving and soon reached some artifact at the end of the level, but they still hadn't encountered a single monster. There were no monsters in this room, only a reward in the form of a bowl of blood in front of a stone tablet. Julian warned her comrades that it was too early to rejoice, and that they needed to be careful not to miss the attack of the monsters, and of all the rewards in this room, there was only a stone tablet. One of the group members exclaimed that they had reached the main treasure and could now turn back. At this time, the system announced that the blood test was beginning, and a huge fountain of this red liquid suddenly gushed out of the bowl. This was not a reward room at all, but a trap. A bloody nightmare appeared in front of them. Julian Lee drew her sword and told everyone to prepare for battle. The squad found itself surrounded by bloody monsters. In order not to burn out his skills, Eric Sankey decided to fight using only 25% of his strength, activating the corresponding function on the Ring of Weakness. With the help of this ring, the owner could choose by what amount his characteristics would be reduced. Eric summoned the Spirit of Trash. This blow scattered the bloody monsters into the corners. Julian was very surprised by the abilities of this first-level scavenger. She charged forward using her sword skills. Eric Sanka's incredible strike did not go unnoticed by the other members of the party. They could not believe that this low-level scavenger had scattered these powerful monsters into tiny pieces with one blow. Meanwhile, these bloody monsters took on human form. These bloody nightmares, although unstable in their state, entering into battle with a person, they began to imitate him and therefore stopped more strongly. So far, however, the battle was going in favor of the people. However, it soon became clear that there was no point in beheading the monsters. They were simply unkillable. The detachment suffered its first losses. Julian Lee, using ice magic, stated that all the team members were somehow helpless. It's just a bloody nightmare, and they're so pathetic that she's even ashamed of them. They look like trash. The mage exclaimed that these monsters were too fast and she didn't have time to cast the spell. Eric Sankey said that the sword is useless against them, so it is better to finish them off on the spot. The scavenger cast the Big Bang spell, channeling energy into the bloody monsters, and the team members couldn't understand how a C-class spell could be cast by a mere scavenger. They thought it was a bug, because a first-level player wouldn't be able to do something like that. Meanwhile, two bloody nightmares attacked Eric Sankey at once. The scavenger concentrated to activate the new skill. Sankey entered a berserk state, increasing his speed, strength, and damage by 100%. The torn flesh of the two monsters flew apart, and then these pieces began to gather into one whole. To everyone's surprise, the monsters had gathered into one enormous B-class monster, which qualified as a king-level bloody nightmare. He could imitate his opponent and become stronger from this. Eric Sankey tried to understand who the king-level monster was imitating. He soon realized that the bloody nightmare was imitating him, but he could not cope with the monster. At this moment, Julian Lee stepped forward with a heavy sword on her shoulders and declared that she would deal with him herself. The girl fearlessly rushed at the huge bloody nightmare of the royal level. Her swordsmanship was impressive in its speed, dexterity, and precision. In addition, her ice magic froze the monster's claw. The bloody nightmare's counterattack almost hit its target, but Julian managed to dodge it. She took a few steps back and decided that she couldn't go on like this any longer. Julian plunged into her memories and recalled the events preceding the trip into this abyss, when everyone was against her wanting to go there alone. Her goal was to conquer that place, the highest level of the Tower of the End. Although her progress was still too far from that of her older sisters and brothers, she still couldn't even come close to their skill. She was excited about the upcoming campaign to clear the abyss, and she imagined the difficulties that awaited her. But Julian felt that if she couldn't handle it, then she wasn't worthy of bearing the Lee name. The entire team, including Eric, watched with interest as Julian Lee fought against the bloody nightmare of the royal level. A special frost flag appeared in the girl's hands, which, in addition to the freezing effect, increased the speed of all allies within a radius of 30 meters by 50%. Julian used magic and a layer of ice froze the bloody monster's movement. The girl decided that even if the ice didn't kill this monster, it would at least slow it down. Julian Lee charged forward with incredible speed, using the Comet Strike skill. Eric Sankey, who was watching the girl with great attention, realized who the God-chosen C-class profession was, and now he was even curious about who would be stronger, the bloody nightmare of the royal level or the chosen Julian Lee. It seemed to Julian that her attack had no effect at all on the monster. Even though she was a C-class warrior, her strength still couldn't compare to that of her brothers and sisters. She also belonged to the Lee family, but she felt like an outcast and the weakest link in the family. She was always laughed at and always criticized. She was asked not to leave the house because the dangers of the abyss were fatal to her. And now, Julian thought that she had to become stronger, even if for this, she had to start from an easier abyss. As long as she keeps challenging herself, she can overcome great difficulties and outdo everyone. She has to do it herself. Julian, making several circular movements with her sword, thrust its tip into the body of the bloody monster with great force. However, his magic fell upon the girl. The female mage from Team Julian panicked and said that a C-class human couldn't handle the monster and the bloody nightmare killed Julian Lee, so they need to escape from here. The monster had already raised its bloody claw over Julian to finish her off, but then Eric Sankey came to the rescue, throwing the monster back with the help of fire magic. The monster's paw separated from its body and flew high into the air. Julian, who had come to her senses, looked at the young man in surprise. This garbage man was a truly unique person. Meanwhile, Eric Sankey used the all-seeing eye. He understood that if this monster reached the king level, it would be able to survive under any circumstances. If the level was high enough, it could even become completely immune to freezing, slowing down, and stopping. Even some places that were originally its weak points would no longer be its weak points as it leveled up. Eric came to the conclusion that there was no point in holding back any longer, and he needed to activate all the stats to their full potential. After this, Eric rushed at the monster with great speed. Julian, meanwhile, was coming to her senses, consuming a healing potion offered to her by the team's healer. Eric Sankey was so fast that the average person's eyes would not be able to follow his movements. Eric knew that once he found the weak spot of the bloody nightmare, everyone would be saved. No matter what part he blows up, it will still grow back on this monster. And he also didn't notice any weak spots on his body, as if this monster was being controlled remotely. From this unexpected thought, an idea came to his mind and he turned to the team. Eric said that when the stone tablet was removed, an image of a blood test appeared, indicating that the tablet had something to do with the bloody nightmare. Eric ordered this stone tablet to be given to him. When the tablet was received, the scavenger, using the intelligence skill, realized that the tablet contained an encrypted ancient spell that would help him remove the blood curse. The solution was right before his eyes. If only he had known, he would have used the all-seeing eye from the very beginning. Apparently, the bloody nightmare was operating in invincible mode, and it managed to swallow the stone tablet. The team members were surprised that the monster suddenly froze, and they were scared. Julian asked Eric if they had ever met before. She thought he looked familiar. Eric Sankey reminded the girl that they met in the abyss 2 years ago. Then he was a garbage man who earned experience points. She witnessed how he received the first experience point in his life. Julian Lee remembered this incident and was surprised again. She even remembered Eric's name and said that she didn't know that he had already managed to change his profession. Eric Sankey smiled and declared that he was now a first-level garbage man. Julian thought sadly that this guy had risked his life and accumulated points over and over again, and had finally become so strong, this garbage man was even stronger than her. The girl told Eric that the tablet would circulate inside the body of the bloody nightmare, and she could freeze it. This would stop the monster for a short time, and Eric would use this time to find the tablet. Eric chuckled and said that 2 heads are better than 1. He suggested that Julian Lee defeat this monster together. Julian smiled too and said that she agreed as long as he stayed out of the way. The team members reminded everyone of themselves and stated that they might not be of much use, but they were ready to fight to the end. Eric Sankey exclaimed that then they would all go together, and they would definitely get out of here alive. The stone tablet was in the stomach of the bloody nightmare. Eric Sankey knew they had 5 seconds before Nightmare would go into invincible mode. The monster would go berserk, and the carnage would begin for the next 30 seconds, so he turned to the team and stated that these 30 seconds were their last hope. They must not forget that they must return alive. After these words from the garbage man, the team's morale rose. The regeneration rate has increased by 15%. Julian Lee was convinced that even a garbage man should not be underestimated and ordered the fighters to monitor the monster's fury. The soldier showed his sword to the monster and called him a bastard. Julian told the mage to aim at the bloody nightmare's regrowth of claws and cover the scavenger. Eric told Julian that the stone tablet would help end the trial, but if it was destroyed by the fireball, then the trial would never end. The garbage man thought he could carry the monster out with one hand. Julian couldn't believe it and thought he was bragging. Did he really want to dive into his stomach and personally get the tablet? Eric Sankey confirmed Julian Lee's guess. The girl ordered the shooter to aim at the roof and make a ladder for them to climb. The archer carried out Julian's instructions and pieces of the roof rained down on the monster. Meanwhile, the girl froze the lower part of the bloody nightmare's body. Eric asked to leave the rest to him. He quickly headed towards the monster. His regenerative ability could heal his minor wounds, meaning that Eric was not afraid of frivolous attacks. The lower part of the monster was frozen, which restricted its movements. Eric was very close to the bloody nightmare and told the fighters to aim for the chest, because it would be easier for them to hit. The scavenger entered a berserk state, thus increasing his speed by 20%. He also used the poison resistance skill, and the reverse effect of the potion he drank added another 15% to his speed. And finally, the potion card he picked up at the entrance to the abyss came in handy. All defensive stats increased by 15%, and it was Eric Sankey's finest hour. He rushed towards his opponent with the speed of a comet, but the monster suddenly bristled with sharp horns. Eric noticed it too late. The enormous speed did not allow him to avoid the collision. The impact sent the garbage man flying back 100 meters and landing on his back. He screwed up big time, even though he thought everything could work out. However, Sankey couldn't give in so easily. He immediately activated his processing abilities. He chose himself as the subject of processing. The system refused to process a living organism and canceled the operation, and since Eric could not be processed, he ordered that he be thrown into the trash with all his might. Eric Sankey was thrown with great force towards the monster. He found himself in the monster's stomach with great speed, penetrating there through the surprised open mouth of the bloody nightmare. The stone tablet ended up in Eric's hands. The body of the terrible monster fell apart into pieces. The trial by blood was passed successfully and the monster was finished. His remains were to be processed. Julian Lee couldn't immediately understand what had happened. She couldn't get her head around the fact that they had won. The team was jubilant and the level was raised for everyone. Julianne was delighted to notice that she had also leveled up and all of her skills had been increased. Eric Sankey has reached max level. The team was given a reward. A huge chest appeared in place of the destroyed monster. Eric saw a reward that was only suitable for players level 10, and his maximum level was only 1. Unfortunately, he was unable to use all this equipment, his reward. Julian Lee told the garbage man that since he was the one who defeated the bloody nightmare, it was up to him to decide how they distributed the reward. Eric whispered in the girl's ear that he had something to say. At this time, the alarm was sounded in the city and headquarters were contacted to prepare for sending a rescue team into the abyss. At this time, Julian Lee entered the room and stated that there was no need for this. Not only members of her family rushed to the girl, but also newspaper and television correspondents. Everyone understood that Julian had managed to clear the abyss. The girl confirmed this guess and stated that there was nothing she couldn't handle because she was a C-class after all. Julian's behavior was encouraged by what Eric told her in the dungeon. He said then that her family was not in poverty. Sankey offered the girl to sell all the cards and even give a discount for friendship. It would cost her 500 magic crystals. But when she leaves this place, she will have to pretend that he was never here and that she cleared this abyss herself. After this agreement, Eric Sankey told Julian to go upstairs and he would soon follow. Then the girl decided that this guy really wanted her to remain in his debt. Eric sat in a secluded place and looked at the stone tablet. A small worm appeared on the tablet, and Sankey said that even such a pitiful creature would not want to be like trash and let others step on it. So this worm should become its strength. He sent the creature for recycling. The system responded that Bloody Nightmare had been successfully reworked, and the Nightmare Body ability was obtained, which uses life essence to summon a Nightmare clone. And the clone can imitate the host and deal damage. The clone appears immediately after the effect is activated. The ability can be improved, and the cooldown is 30 seconds. It was a great skill. Eric Sankey was eager to put this ability to use. He gave all the equipment that required a high level to Julian Lee, And if you think about it, a scavenger with a bunch of cool equipment will definitely not go unnoticed by observers. On the contrary, the scavengers are so inconspicuous that no one would notice if he started selling them secretly. But it's unlikely that anyone would buy all this from a garbage man. Here, the system reported that the equipment had been reworked and Eric received 1 standard point. Sankey realized that he had accidentally recycled the equipment. He was surprised to read that recycling is the processing of sorted waste after preliminary classification, then crushing, melting, and separating it into materials that can be recycled. Standard point is a universal unit obtained by decomposing useless equipment that can be used to upgrade, repair, and create new items. Eric was asked to complete the repair of a normal dagger, which means that unnecessary equipment could also be recycled. Eric Sankey wondered if he should follow these system prompts, but he could get 5 points for refining a regular dagger. Its remaining usefulness was only 33%, and he had almost thrown it away after killing the boss. If he subtracts 1 point from that random reworking, he still needs 4 more points, so then he just needs to recycle 4 more weapons. Eric realized that the weapons were now not only repaired, but slightly improved in terms of durability and damage. In other words, as long as they were constantly worn out, repaired, even trash weapons could be improved. It seemed to him that even the garbage equipment needed to be improved in quality, but the system congratulated him on completing his training. As a reward, he was offered a magic potion that could instantly restore mana and at the same time restore strength. Eric Sankey decided that he had no need for attribute points right now. His biggest concern was that when he dives into the abyss, he can't predict its depth, and many unprepared guys often run out of mana before they find the boss's lair and have to retrace their steps to replenish it. So magic bottles are often the key to the group's survival. Now Eric had learned to restore items, and activating a magic potion required 6 points and any capacity. It's no surprise that glasses are required to make the potion, but what is the container for? He asked the bartender to provide him with some kind of container. Then he sat down at a table at the end of the establishment. The trash was completely recycled, and the next step was regeneration. Is this some kind of minigame? All the containers he had on his desk were filled with the potion. It looked strange, but it was quite usable, and Eric drank 1 glass of the magic potion. The potion tasted like rotten eggs, but his magic increased, as did his strength and stamina, and the scavenger felt his mana increase, while his physical weakness disappeared. He was confident that today he would clear out another abyss. As he was leaving the cafe, some people called out to him. The bald, huge man said that only a few days had passed, but his behavior had noticeably changed. He couldn't have found the crystals while digging through the trash, and in the meantime, he had been looking for him for a long time and was about to declare that Eric Sankey had disappeared. Eric said that he had already paid off all his debts and they should leave him alone. The bald man said that he was still not free. He may have paid the money, but his contract was still in force. He should not forget that he is a garbage man. He is a garbage man and will die without trying to jump above his head. After this, the man knocked the glass with the potion out of Eric's hands. He said that Sankey was so pathetic that he couldn't even hold a glass in his hands, and now it would end badly for him. The extortionists were preparing to attack Eric, and according to the rules of supervision of those who change jobs, using their ability outside the abyss is prohibited. The only ones who are allowed to activate their abilities outside the abyss are law enforcement officers and special armed personnel, so Sankey needed to find a blind spot of the CCTV cameras to use his recycling and regeneration skills. The bald man suggested that Eric eat the spilled pearls one by one and then lick clean everything that was spilled. He even volunteered to help him collect all the pearls. After all, they should help their smaller brothers. Eric Sankey replied seriously that he agreed, but the bald one had to kiss his ass first. The extortionist was about to attack Eric when he was stopped by Rodrigo Caesar, the leader of the C-Class hunting group Blood Oath. He sternly asked the bald man if he had gathered enough people, and he replied that one more person was needed. Rodrigo glanced at Eric Sankey and informed him that he was hired into the group, and the bald man said that the man was just a garbage man. He suggested that they go now and find someone who could fight in the group. But Rodrigo replied that when entering the abyss under the red moon, all the monsters would be extremely ferocious, and he needed someone who could be used as cannon fodder, and strength did not matter to him. Eric Sankey knew that during the red moon, monsters would go berserk. Rare monsters would also spawn in the abyss. The rewards for killing these monsters would be doubled, and the quality of the magic crystals dropped would also increase. Eric told Rodrigo Caesar that he was ready to enlist. Caesar ordered the garbage man to come closer. The man next to Rodrigo suddenly pointed his finger at Sankey and screamed. To keep Lance Chance from babbling too much, Eric covered his mouth with his hand. Lance couldn't believe that Eric Sankey, a garbage man, was standing in front of him. And he reminded Chance that if he hadn't used the power of each of them then, they would have all died there. Only thanks to him he was still alive. Rodrigo asked if they knew each other, but Eric replied that he didn't know the man. Rodrigo Caesar nodded his head and said that it was clear that a man who killed his own team members could not have friends. When he left, Eric asked Chance how he managed to get out, and he answered that at first the committee wanted to sentence him to 15 years in prison. But he dropped all his charges and paid a fine of $1.5 million to get released. Now, because of Sankey, he is a real bankrupt. He lost all his levels and now he has to start all over again. If he does not pay the damages, he will report him to the committee. Eric Sankey narrowed his eyes and warned Lance that one more word and he would actually process him like rotting garbage. The metro of City C was incredibly huge in size. It was in this underground structure that the entrance to the high-level abyss was located. Third-level Bard Chonky Taft greeted the new arrivals and congratulated them on joining the ranks of cannon fodder, inquiring about their profession. Eric introduced himself as a level 1 scavenger and Lance Chance as a level 1 mage. Chonky said that everything was fine because there was only a rabble gathered here, and inside the abyss no one would laugh at Eric Sankey. After all, they all decided to exchange their lives for money, and there was nothing more humiliating about that. He wanted to introduce Erica to the other members of their suicide club. Their team needed a leader, and as a level 3 bard, he put himself forward as a candidate. Lear Stark, a second-level healer, replied that he was the highest level of them all and they would obey. Leon Chapman, a third-level warrior, did not object either. Rodrigo Caesar announced that in addition to the 6 core members of the Blood Oath, this time they will be joined by 5 temporary members. Cannon fodder is cannon fodder, and unlike the others who change jobs, cannon fodder is simply used as live bait to reduce the losses of the main squad. This abyss has the form of a labyrinth, in each room of which there are many traps. The cannon fodder is faced with the task of finding a passage to the boss's room as quickly as possible and conveying this information to the main team. Caesar did not place any hope in their fighting skills and advised them to run away when they encountered a monster. If they want to get the money, then at least one of them must remain alive. If only one survives, then all the money will go to him. Lear Stark cleared his throat and said that he had no place to retreat because he had 4 daughters and he had to feed them somehow. Leon Chapman said his wife was dying and he needed the money, so he had to take a risk. Chonky commanded the team to enter the abyss. Leon asked Stark about the new man named Eric, and he replied that someone always dies in the cannon fodder squad, and someone else always takes his place. Leon agreed with Stark, but what he meant was that this new face looked too relaxed, and it was the first time he had seen someone go to their death so calmly. Chonky Taft said with surprise that they had not met any monsters on the way yet, and Lance asked him not to croak. Lear and Leon simultaneously noticed that it had suddenly become cold in the dungeon. Chonky suggested simply moving on, ignoring the cold. Eric noticed a guillotine above Chonka's head that had jumped out of its trap. Sankey managed to stop her fall with the help of magic, thereby saving Taft's life. He seemed like a real lucky guy, having miraculously escaped death. His luck increased by 1 point. The team went further and came across spider cocoons. These were 5th-level demon spiders, elite monsters, demonic insects that had the ability to spit poison. Chonky Taft couldn't stand the sight of spiders. Lance immediately attacked the monsters with fire magic. Eric Sankey stood quietly to the side and watched as the team members attempted to attack these dangerous monsters. All their attempts were in vain. The damage dealt was 0. While the spider attacks were causing a lot of trouble, Eric saw the dead body of the spider that Leon had successfully defeated and sent it to be recycled, thus earning 1 attribute point. He received the Arcana, a tempering poison that allowed him to apply a poisoning effect when a weapon hit a target, dealing 60% weapon damage for a few seconds, and if the attack was a critical hit, the total damage would be increased to 120%. Sankey realized that by recycling corpses, he could get not only skill cards, but also Arcana, and it seemed that Arcana enhanced equipment. Leon told Eric that he had enough of his daydreams, and that if he couldn't help, he had to back off. Eric decided to try the hardening poison on his regular blade. He, having prepared his weapon for battle, took a step towards the spider. Chonky Taft, putting on a protective mask, was afraid to admit that, although he was the oldest in level, his profession did not imply any combat skills at all. He could only boost others. The situation was too dangerous now, but he knew what to do. Chonky pulled out a microphone and started singing some song. However, this action made the enemy even stronger. Taft exclaimed in panic that this must not be the right song. The enraged spider lunged at Chonky Taft. Eric Sankey used his combat dagger, which was enhanced with a hardening poison. The monsters became much stronger, as if they were drawing strength from the surrounding air. Leon saw no way out except to retreat, and Lance, in a panic, sent one fireball after another at the damned spiders. At this time, Eric Sankey quickly rushed into the thick of the enemy. Lance Chance looked at the pieces of flesh of these monsters flying in confusion. The strength of a first-level scavenger was terrifying. Lear and Leon couldn't believe their eyes. How could a simple garbage man do this? Eric knew that the demon spiders were resistant to poisons, which weakened the effect of poisoning. And it was not surprising that the lasso he received from them, a hardening poison. The effect itself is imperceptible, but becomes so during the fight. Chonky laughed nervously and said that he just wanted to boost someone from the group, but killed a monster. Eric calmly stopped in front of the group of spiders and thought that the monsters in this abyss were intelligent, and they would not attack a target they could not see. They will probably turn around and run away. Lance noticed that the monsters were retreating, and Leon said that this was only the first location, and it was already so scary. Sankey had already processed enough arcana, leaving only one card just in case, and exchanged all the rest for attribute points. In total, he received 54 attribute points. Chonky lit a torch and said that since the monsters had retreated, they should move on, because their mission was to advance as far as possible. But from now on, they should be more careful and not fall into traps. Eric thought that Chonky said the last sentence referring to himself. Sankey discovered the Berserker's secret area, located between two columns. These zones appear because of the red moon. But is it worth exploring? Sankey caused a bloody nightmare. The clone appeared before its master. He ordered him to walk around with the team under his guise, and then he would take him away. Chonky was surprised by the absence of Eric Sankey and asked his clone where he had been and ordered him not to lag behind anymore. Sankey, meanwhile, decided to explore the Berserker's zone. Soon he felt a dangerous movement behind him. Eric was prepared for the monster's attack and took certain measures using his blade. This monster had a high level of protection against physical damage. There was not a single scratch on it from the young man's blows. In addition, Sankey himself received a serious blow from this terrible monster. He had to use the all-seeing eye to find out the characteristics of this monster. It turned out to be a level 20 elite monster, a tarantula. Eric decided that if he could recycle this elite monster, it might drop elite abilities. The spider attacked Sankey with a shot of poison from its mouth. He managed to escape the fire, and Eric activated a large explosion. The spider continued to fire at the garbage man. It turns out that this monster was fireproof and was not afraid of flame. He could only be killed in the classical way. Eric Sankey rushed towards the monster with a dagger in his hand, aiming for its weak spot to deal a critical blow. While the bites of level 5 demons are poisonous, it seems that the level 20 tarantula has resistance to poisons. It was surprising that this was precisely its weak point. This was due to changes in defense and ability to reproduce. As they no longer rely on their own hunting abilities, they can simply send the demon spiders to hunt in their place, and so the spider was now poisoned by its own venom. Eric Sankey never expected this to be possible. However, even in its poisoned state, the monster was dangerous and it trapped Eric in a sticky web. The scavenger then activated his berserker state, increasing his strength and breaking those magical bonds. He attacked the level 20 tarantula again, and this dangerous monster was dealt with. It was now possible to upgrade the berserker card and choose one of two upgrades, Blood Splash, which increased the effectiveness of the berserker state, and Seething Rage, which increased the duration of the berserker state. People would rather choose the second option because it is a more reliable one, but this tarantula is an unusual monster. Eric Sankey chose the first one. He wanted to strengthen the berserker state. The only thing is that the health drain is too detrimental a side effect. However, Eric chose the former. With his regeneration ability, this side effect would be less noticeable. By activating Blood Spray, he would be able to harm those who have strong resistance to physical damage. This was the advantage of this card. The choice was made, and Sankey noticed that his level had risen again. Eric chose a card with confidence. He could officially take this equipment from the Abyss and sell it for 15,000. The rest he had to process, and he wondered what skill he would gain from this tarantula. The tarantula card that Eric received allowed him to summon up to 4 tarantulas to fight alongside him and evolve according to their combat experience. Sankey could not only summon them, but also upgrade them. At this time, the main detachment came across a mine in the Abyss. Lear Stark said that it was all the influence of the Red Moon, and that there could be many magical crystals in the mine, and finding at least one would be a great success. Lear raised his staff, which had Fury's eye, marking everything within a radius of 60 meters and allowing others to see that place on a map. Lance grabbed the healer roughly by the lapels. With such a treasure they could bathe in gold for the rest of their lives. Why did he mark this place for those greedy scum? To which Lear replied that they would not have survived if they had found this place without their instructions. Leon told his comrades that, after all, the job of cannon fodder is to pave the way for the top. If they die here, it will simply be written off as an accident, without batting an eyelid, because to them they are just trash. Lance replied that since he was trash, it wasn't a pity to throw him away. Although he didn't consider himself trash, he remembered how Eric Sankey had thrown him out at one time. Lance still hated that garbage man. He believed that even though his level was low again, it didn't matter as long as he could raise some money. If he can get good equipment to cover his zero skills, he can join the main force of the scavenging teams. Lance Chance decided to steal a couple of crystals and keep them for himself. As soon as he touched one of the crystals, the system reported that they were trapped. A blinding beam of bright light burst out from the depths of the dungeon and headed towards the group. Lear Starkey's head was pierced by this treacherous beam and he fell dead. Nobody could understand what happened. Meanwhile, Eric Sankey summoned the first bird eater, and at the initial level, it looked absolutely defenseless. However, this baby could grow into a level 5 spider demon. Now Sankey had to take care of it. If he wanted the tarantula to survive on the battlefield, he had to level it up to at least level 5, so he decided to give it some points. The spider's level has been increased, and it has received a new skill. Web. Lear Starkey was dead, and his comrades stood over him in confusion. Leon Chapman grabbed Lance by the collar and accused him of killing Lear, although he claimed it was an accident. Leon emotionally exclaimed that Lear did it for his family because he wanted to feed his children, and died because of Lance's greed. Chance replied that he needed money too. If he hadn't dropped back to level 1, he would already be living well and not dealing with idiots. Leon drew his sword and accused Lance of betrayal, and Lance replied that Leon was no better. In this world, everything is decided by money. He would have done it too if he was paid enough. In the midst of the argument, there was a quiet round of applause, and a voice that sounded like Rodrigo Caesar said that he liked Lance's priorities. He ironically offered him a place in the Blood Oath. Caesar's assistant informed the boss that Lear's corpse was still warm. Rodrigo said that death is a private phenomenon here, and beggars are ready to risk even their lives for the chance to earn some extra money. The desire to earn more is not something shameful, and dying is not shameful either. These crystals, which only appear during the red moon, can be used to buy cities. One piece is enough to not work for the rest of your days, but he forgot to tell them something. The price for appropriating one such thing is one life. A huge knight with a sword appeared in front of the team of researchers. Caesar's assistant told everyone to take a crystal and put it in his bucket, but if they tried to escape, they would all be corpses. Leon exclaimed that any of these crystals could kill them. Were they really that sophisticated in their attempt to get rid of them? Caesar asked Leon if he didn't have to pay for his wife's treatment. Didn't he say that he would do anything just to save her? He must remember that the desire to earn more is not something shameful. Leon apologized and exclaimed that he couldn't touch the crystals. In fact, he lost all his money and came here to pay off his debts. He doesn't want to die at all. Rodrigo Caesar sighed heavily and said that it was a pitiful sight. Lance, watching Caesar, decided that this guy was much cooler than him, and he could not compete with him even on his best days. He turned to Rodrigo and said that he heard from him that the Blood Oath could accept him. He was only a fire mage, but he would very much like to join his hunting party. Caesar didn't remember saying that, but his assistant confirmed Lance's words. Caesar then told Lance Chance to come to him. He said, did Lance really think there was a place for him? He would never take trash like him into the ranks of the elite. After all, he is a pathetic traitor, and death awaits him anyway. He will simply betray at least some value to his death. He intends to make everyone walking dead so that they collect crystals for him. Chonky Taft could not stand such bullying and wanted to stand up for his team member. Eric Sankey's hand fell on his shoulder, asking the leader not to do anything stupid. Eric asked to give it to him and wait there. He stepped forward and asked Rodrigo how dangerous it could be to collect these crystals. Caesar's assistant indignantly asked, what kind of crap appeared here? Eric took one of the crystals with an indifferent look and held it in his hand. Everyone immediately hid behind the rocks. They were afraid of being killed. Rodrigo Caesar's representatives were confused. Could the trap only work once? Eric Sankey was guided by the fact that even if it was a death trap, he would be lucky and fulfill all the requirements, and perhaps there would be no effect at all. His luck indicator would reach the threshold value. Caesar assumed that the trap was working after all, but that was Eric's luck. It was probably over 60. But can someone at level 1 have such a high luck rate? Even for those who can change their profession, the luck rate does not increase by itself. There is only one reasonable explanation. The trap does not work. Caesar's assistant carefully took the crystal and said that the trap was definitely broken. After all, nothing happened to him. At that moment, a deadly beam of light struck his head. The assistant fell to the ground dead. Rodrigo Caesar said that, disregarding all other possible reasons, this guy Eric Sankey has the highest luck stat of anyone here. Perhaps it has something to do with his profession. In the Abyss, the stats that most often increase are those related to strength. No one would waste their attribute points to develop something as useless as luck, and Sankey thought he had simply distributed the points equally. Rodrigo angrily added that the original plan was to turn them all into corpses that he could then use, but plans have changed. Now he only wants one corpse with a high luck stat. As for the rest, he will just get rid of them.